Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias the Guy. Well, we've got this insane report that just came out from the Privacy Council, how the RCMP lost a memory key. Yeah, lost a memory key with information details on it that had a lot of very important people who shouldn't be known. And criminals got it and are selling the information. Yes. Is this Russia? Where do we live? Oh no, guess what? We rank lower than Russia. And I'm going to prove it just another day here being a Canadian in this new post-national state by a study that came out called the RTI rating, which is the Global Right to Information, and it deals with the ability for its citizens to access information. And we are way behind. We're like I said, welcome to the new fascist post-national state. Elbows up. We got a few other things we're going to report on here. Trump's adding an additional 2,000 National Guard to the chaos going on down in the States. And there's a lot of evidence coming out that this was actually coordinated. And now I knew about this already a couple days ago. I kind of had an inclination, and I started doing some research. And thanks to Grok, I found enough information to kind of figure out that there was a correlation, not necessarily 100% proof that politicians were doing things. But now today, the rest of it all came out, and yeah, this is a coordinated attack. People, they're being paid. This is a setup. This is J6 all over again. This is with the help of propaganda, man. This is the way. Welcome to the takeover of our democracy. This is why we have to get serious and start, sharing and subscribing and getting the information out. We've got a pile more stories. The driver that tried to drive through into the Coliseum in Vancouver. Just more bullets flying and other chaos. So let's just, without further ado, let's just get started on this crazy report. This is just absolutely insane. So our lost RCMP memory key with informant details was offered for sale by criminals. The RCMP lost a memory key containing personal information about victims, witnesses, and informants, and later learned it was being offered for sale by criminals, the federal privacy watchdog says. Now, listen to the dates, people. This is the important part. A detailed report from the Office of the Privacy Commissioner, Philippe Dufresne, reveals the RCMP told the watchdog about the breach in March 2022. Prompting a lengthy investigation. The RCMP determined that the unencrypted USB storage device contained the personal information of 1,741 people, including witnesses, complainants, subjects of interest, informants, police officers, and civilian employees. The RCMP's investigation also established that only some of the documents on the device were password protected, and that the device itself was not encrypted nor password protected, the Privacy Watchdog report warned. The Mounties learned from a confidential source 3 weeks after the loss of the data on the device was being offered for sale by members of the criminal community. Given the nature and sensitivity of the information that the RCMP handles on a daily basis, their office would have expected the RCMP to have strict security measures in place to safeguard its information holdings, the Privacy Commissioner report says. They would also have expected for those measures to be stringently monitored and that the RCMP would take prompt action where non-compliance, whether accidental or not, was discovered. Dufresne's office found the RCMP violated the Privacy Act given that the personal information of individuals was disclosed without their consent. The Privacy Watchdog also concluded that RCMP personnel failed to report the loss of the USB storage device to the force's authorities in a timely manner. However, once aware of the breach, the RCMP's notification to affected individuals and the steps taken to manage the risk of further harm to them were generally appropriate in the circumstance, the report says. Generally appropriate. Finally, Dufresne's office found the RCMP failed to take appropriate measures to safeguard the personal information. The privacy watchdog recommended the RCMP adopt strict security measures for the use of USB storage devices. This included measures not only to ensure that approved USB devices are used, but also audits to confirm that devices are returned when no longer needed, as well as additional training, the report says. The commissioner reports that the Mounties agreed in principle to the recommendations, in principle. Like, are you kidding me? But did not commit to implementing them with a specific timeline. RCMP spokeswoman Robin Percival said Monday the force initiated a review of its security and privacy policies as well as its awareness program to ensure employees were reminded and sensitized of their continued responsibilities to protect sensitive information. Now, what do fascist policing and military services do? What does fascist governments do? They initiate their own personal review of their own security and privacy policies. This is what the RCMP are doing. There should be an outsourced commission, people outside of the actual RCMP who don't have any bias. They should be the ones looking into it. This is something that the Liberal government has completely removed, starting with their government, and followed suit all the way down as they appointed more and more people to senior positions throughout all levels of the entirety of our nation. The program also addresses the immediate actions to be taken in case of a security breach, Percival said in a written response. The RCMP remains committed in preventing the use of unauthorized devices and unencrypted USB storage devices and to implementing appropriate measures and solutions across the country, she added. This report by the Canadian Press was first published June 9th, 2025. Shocking? Well, getting desensitized already with all of the incompetence that is befalling every single organization across our country. But this is, by definition, a post-national state. Welcome to fascism. Now, this is really interesting. This should be on the front of every single news outlet. And nobody's talking about it. And the craziest part is that these reports have come out a few times. And nobody said anything. And there's reason for it. Because the propaganda has a job to do. They need to protect their wallets, their paychecks, and the people, the politicians, who pay them. So this is why you're not hearing about this. Now, theoretically, this should have almost been the first breaking story because it's that important. And after we listen to it, I'm going to go right to the actual report and I'm going to show you where we level from democracy, socialism to fascism. And, well, I'm not surprised, but a lot of my viewers may be. So make sure that you like, share, and subscribe so the rest of Canada can see this, because you'll see at the end of this how important it is for mainstream media to listen and understand and try to protect democracy. Let's get started.
Okay, thank you. You have our letter to Prime Minister Carney, and I'll just highlight a few points from that letter. Our starting premise is that the Access to Information Act is no longer fit for purpose. In fact, we think it is broken. That may sound like strong language, but we don't think it is. Firstly, it's not my style to use excessive language, but also the literature on this act is redolent with much stronger terms than that. I will highlight just one piece of evidence to bolster that or to backstop that claim. Canada sits in a dismal 53rd position out of 140 countries with access to information laws, according to the respected Right to Information rating, which measures the strength of the law. Our second starting premise is that successive reviews have failed to fix this act. And the last review, which was presented to Parliament in late 2022, was particularly unfortunate inasmuch as it called only for practice reforms and not for amending the act, even though everyone knows that the act needs to be amended. In our opinion, a key contributing factor for the failure of that review was that it was undertaken by Treasury Board Secretariat, TBS. Of course, Treasury Board Secretariat is subject to the Act, so when it engages in a reform of the Act, that puts it in a conflict of interest. It's hardly going to call for a much stronger Act, creating much stronger obligations for itself. Another review is due to be kicked off later this month. If it is the same as the last review, it will not only be a waste of public resources and also our valuable time and effort, it will also undermine public trust. That is something that the government cannot afford at this challenging time for the country.
Now, it should erode public trust if the public was aware of it. But we live in a socialist country, and propaganda is not and will not talk about it or disclose this information to the general public. And again, at the end of this video, you will see how the point is proven.
During the election, Prime Minister Carney called for an objective review, end quote. We endorse that call. In the annex to the letter, you will see a set of terms of reference, which we have put together. And those terms of reference indicate what an objective review means for us. And I'll highlight here just 3 key points of that, and you can delve down into the terms of reference for more detail. The first is that the panel overseeing the review should be independent of government and other political biases. That, for us, is of the essence. The second is that the panel should have a broad mandate and powers to conduct the review. It needs to be able to do a proper review. And the third is that it should have sufficient resources so that it can roll out the review and undertake proper consultation with Canadians. And just finally, it's not enough to do an excellent review if nothing happens after that. So we're also calling on the Prime Minister to implement the recommendations of the panel, the independent panel, when they come out. Thank you, and I'll now hand over to Matt to read the letter.
So let's take a close look at what he is actually talking about. Now, this is the actual report, the RTI rating. They do a fabulous job on giving different ways to look at all of the demographics, geographics, and political spheres to be able to compare this on the global stage. So we're looking at, you know, pretty much the majorities of countries with X amount of population and above. And of course, what the world would label as all civilized countries and nations. So the RTI is an analysis of the quality of the world's access to information laws. This follows under pretty much the top 3 necessities needed to have a true, democratic, free nation. You're going to be blown away by this, ladies and gentlemen. The RTI rating is a leading global tool for assessing the strength of national legal frameworks for accessing information held by public authorities, i.e., the right to information. It is widely used by intergovernmental organizations, RTI advocates, governments, legislators, lawyers, academics, and others. The ratings methodology is derived from international standards as well as the best practices at the national level. Scores are based on 61 discrete indicators, each of which looks at a particular feature of a strong legal regime for an RTI. These indicators are divided into 7 main categories, namely right of access, scope, requesting procedure, exceptions and refusals, appeals, sanctions and protections, and promotional measures. Now, so in other words, it deals with pretty much all the aspects needed for a country to be called a democracy or you know, a civilized nation. But the way that they rank it, you'd have to call it a democracy, even though there are some countries that are dictator-led that are in this. this is where I said they do allow a population-based statistic in order for it to come in. And how most people would know, pretty much all of the dictatorship ran tyrannical countries, you would expect to be at the bottom of the list, because we see and the media is constantly bombarding people about these countries. Get ready. So this is the color-coded map. Dark green being the best. Light green, next. That yellowish, next. Orangish, next. Red, bottom of the barrel. Now, if you look at this, it's already surprising, because you can already see how you have countries where you wouldn't assume that they would be further up the ladder on freedom and democracy and transparency. But once you actually get to the list, you will be shocked. So I'm just going to scroll right down, and I'm going to go by country. Now again, I post all my evidence down below. And I know a lot of my competitors use it, and then like yesterday and then this morning, I had, or not this morning where I'm recording this now because it's actually in the wee hours of the morning, but yesterday morning, I had a bombardment of different people who are fans of mine that they're like, man, so and so's copying you again and blah 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 blah, and I'm just like, you know what? Yes, it bugs me that they don't give me credit, but getting the information out is a hell of a lot more important than any type of fame or stardom. So as I always say, please do like, share, and subscribe and help me grow my channel. This gives me the opportunity to show, and my subscribers to show, how much further ahead I am than other people and how I'm not afraid to report on a lot of issues. It's important for people to get the information. And there's other things too, like I got a couple of people, fans that watch, and they share my stuff to other competitors to whom are already, trust me, they're already subscribers under a fictitious name. I've had other people show me evidence, and like I said, I just shrug my shoulders, because as long as the evidence is getting out there, that's all that matters. I did this show to try to save democracy. I didn't do this show to be a spectacle. My main goal was to get the truth out, the facts. So sorry, just the facts. Now, here's the countries. This is shocking. So from the top down, let's go over this list. So these are the most freedom, and we're going to work our way all the way down to the least freedom. And I'm only going to go a little bit past where Canada is. Don't have to go much past it, because you're going to see we're already below communist and fascist nations and dictator nations. Number 1, Afghanistan. 2, Mexico. Then Serbia, Sri Lanka, Gambia, Slovenia, Albania, Croatia, India, Liberia, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, Vanuatu, El Salvador, Tunisia. Like, really? Tunisia? Are you kidding me? South Africa? Namibia, St. Kitts and Nevis, Ukraine, Maldives, Antigua and Barbuda, Kenya, Nepal, Nicaragua. We're getting smoked by Nicaragua. Ethiopia, North Macedonia, Bangladesh, Brazil, Pakistan, people, Seychelles, Finland, Kosovo, Yemen, Argentina, Malawi, Colombia, Kyrgyzstan, Armenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bahamas, Sweden, Indonesia, United Kingdom, Russia, South Korea, Ghana, Uganda, Estonia, Ireland, Azerbaijan. I love that. Azerbaijan. There's just something about that name. Chile, New Zealand. And there we are. Canada. We are behind Russia. Think about this, people. Now, like, and I know I get a lot of people, they're like, wow, fascist is a strong word. Really? Is it such a strong word? When you're behind communism, you're behind socialism, you're behind dictatorships. Dun 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 dun. Hello, elbows up, everybody. And this is why people are electing the same tyrant governments in power. The media, crickets. And the killer is, I mean, okay, so we're 53rd. 53rd. Holy schmack. Like, that's just an embarrassment. And so every time that, you know, your prime minister or your liberals or even your conservatives, somebody gets up there and says this is the best country in the world, they deserve to be slapped. And right now we kind of got this thing going around in my family where it's the tortilla slap. I don't know if you've seen the video. It's where you kind of fill your mouth with water and you take turns and you smack each other with the That's what needs to be done with these people. Back in the early 80s, it was the pie. They take a pie crust, they fill it right full of whipped cream, and they would come out and they would wait for the politician to actually kind of show themselves, and they'd smash that bugger in the face with a pie. Now you can't even get near them. But this is what needs to be done. Like, they need to be slapped with the frozen fish. Because this is ridiculous that we're number 53. It's an absolute embarrassment. And now here is the kicker, the proof in the pudding on why. This is the end. This is the end of this presser. Look at how much interest your bot-paid media has in the freedom and democracy, the transparency of its government.
If we have any questions online, please use the raise hand function now. Si vous avez une question en ligne, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction lever main. We don't have any questions online, so if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Yes, so I'd just like to make a final statement to the Prime Minister.
That's your media, right there. Right, number 53 behind dictatorships, communist countries, and fascist regimes. Number 53 on the list, people.
Prime Minister Carney, some things are not for sale. Canada is not for sale. Well, neither is its democracy or the accountability which underpins that. Secrecy is a fraud on accountability. Let's work together to build the strong, free, and democratic Canada, which is ultimately what is needed to resist the external shocks we are currently facing. Thank you.
Yep. Crickets. You won't see this on mainstream. They won't show it to you. I guarantee it. They won't show it to you. They won't talk about it. They don't want you to know. This is the stuff they hide. Because if the people were aware, just like that document that came out that I reported on 2.5 months ago, if the people were really aware of how bad our finances were, of how corrupt our government was, there would be riots in the streets. There would be a civil war. It would happen. There would be a total collapse. But people are blind. They don't know. And this is why I say, you can't... there are idiots out there. There are those liberal card holders that, yes, it doesn't matter what happened, even if they knew what was going on in front of them and a man in a little wee mustache came out and rose his arm up and said, we're going to get rid of all these people, they would do it. We know that's there. It's a small demographic. It's like 20-25%. You know, it's the rest of them. The ones that put this government back in power, they don't know. And this is, like I said, with that poll I was trying to run, that I just can't. I've got all of this data. How do I put it together when you have people who just refuse to talk to you because of their own ignorance? Instead, they call you names. Unbelievable. This is where we're at. But if they had information, if they had the truth, do you really think they would have voted for this government? Do you really think we'd have the Conservative Party we have today? Knowing all of this, we would have a complete reset across the entire sphere. And I'm talking everybody from the federal to the provincial. It would change everything, which is what needs to be done. Not going to happen. Media, crickets. Crickets. This is how societies crumble. It's just an embarrassment. Now, moving on. We're just going to kind of catch up. And this is like I was saying earlier. I had information that there were a lot of paid protesters out there. And there were instances where, and I've seen this before in the past, they purposely leave bricks and rocks and stuff in certain areas weeks in advance of certain things happening to try to trigger the people and give them an outlet for their rage, thus carrying a narrative that then these politicians or the police or whoever put them there can then use it for their own political gain to push their ideology. Now, I'd seen a little bit about how there were some bricks left out of a certain building, and the people that worked there were all affiliated with the mayor. In fact, the mayor herself was actually on board, and there's documents proving that she was actually knowingly and wittingly leaving them out there for some reason with the entire crew that works with her on this council to do it on purpose, just before all of these riots took off. And now more documents have come out showing they're actually hiring thugs and paying them well. And guess what? The Trump administration have the documents, and they're already checking banks. And this is going to be huge, people. We could very well be seeing major political figures finally being arrested and charged for the just complete and utter chaos they cause for their own power-hungry selves. So let's just first get caught up on what's going on. And now I was going to play Fox because Fox was at least giving a better truth to it. But I much rather use kind of the middle of the road, the left, not the hardcore left media. So let's take a listen.
Eyewitness News reporter Rob Hayes is live in studio with those details about the new reinforcements the federal government is sending.
Yeah, Giovanna and David, it seemed like every hour that passed today seemed to bring with it an escalation of force. What started with our local law enforcement has expanded to National Guard members, mutual aid partners from other agencies in the region, and now even U.S. Marines. The president and governor acting independently of each other and both pumping up the number of armed people here. When it comes to President Donald Trump's response to LA's immigration protests, Trump is doing what he generally does, doubling down. After calling in the California National Guard over the weekend, Trump has now ordered U.S. Marines to deploy to LA, an estimated 700 of them from 29 Palms.
Combat troops are trained to locate the enemy, engage them, and kill them. They're not trained to carry out law enforcement activities in our communities within the United States.
What were they doing in Afghanistan after they were fighting? They were policing, they were helping, they were being humanitarians. This is fear, hate, and division. This man is a left-wing lunatic.
John Cohen says LAPD and the Sheriff's Department have the capacity and training to handle the situation or ask other law enforcement agencies to assist if needed. But adding Marines to the mix, Cohen says, increases the danger, and not only to the protesters.
It may result in law enforcement officers, military personnel, or even those peacefully demonstrating in a constitutionally protected way, may result in them getting hurt.
And just about an hour ago, Governor Gavin Newsom announced that Trump is deploying an additional 2,000 guardsmen to L.A. Newsom accusing the president of purposely escalating the tensions here.
He made this up. This is a manufactured crisis.
Newsom releasing a statement today saying he's now shifting 800 more local and state police officers to L.A. Chaos is exactly what Trump wanted. Now we are sending in hundreds more law enforcement to pick up the pieces. This afternoon, California Attorney General Rob Bonta filed a lawsuit against Trump, claiming he does not have the authority to activate the California National Guard.
This is a law that requires the governor's consent to activate the National Guard. This is the first time since 1965 that a president has activated the National Guard without a request from the state's governor.
Bonta's claims may be accurate and steeped in legal standing, but experts say there is a good chance the courts will find in Trump's favor.
The courts are very deferential.
They're going to find in Trump's favor. Guaranteed they will, because Trump is in the right. The orange man bad, but guess what? He seems to be right a lot. Now, let's just get into this whole Okay, so this is craziness. So these bricks, bags of rocks, and cinder blocks are being stored in the back lot of the Contemporary Art Museum. And guess who just happens to be on the board there? Karen Bass. You can't make this crap up. Now, thank you, Egg, for posting this. And he's absolutely correct, because the documents I actually already found. I used Grok to help me find it.
A bundle of rocks, pallets, trash cans.
Okay, now, this is a document proving it. So this is the Board of Trustees from 2024 to 2025. The names on it are Maria Seffer in the chair, Carolyn Clark Powers the president, Eugenio Lopez Alonso the vice chair, the Honorable Karen Bass, Joanna Burton, Kathy B. Cypress, Tim Disney, Jennifer Hawks Duarte. Now, it just so happens that 3 other people on that list are also involved in the Democratic Party. This is a setup, without a doubt. Now, moving on, this is another document that has come out. This is a part of a post sent through organizations like Antifa, where they're literally advertising that they're looking. It's a want ad. They're even encircling within here, so you can see on the right-hand side, the area that they're trying to concentrate the thugs into. So they're trying to get a mass amount of people in this area, as opposed to small groups scattered all over the place. They want the highest impact, the highest level of destruction and chaos and thuggery. Looking for the toughest badasses in the city of Los Angeles. Now, it goes down, paying $6,500 to $12,500 per week. This is absolutely insane. Let me blow this up. Well, son of a gun, it will not let me blow it up for some reason. Anyways, I kind of read this over earlier. Literally, it's a want ad. They're paying huge amount of dollars. They're asking for people who aren't afraid to do harm. They're asking for serious, real thugs. Weaklings need not apply. You need to be willing to break the law and suffer the consequences. They go on, and there's other letters and attachments and other documents that are part of all of this, where they tell you, they're telling you that you should cover your face, make sure you wear gloves if you have a criminal record. They explain all the processes in which you need to protect yourself, and there is even links to legal aid in case you do get caught. And if you end up being part of this program, your name is put into there, you're locked into their registry, then you will get backdoor payments to better quality lawyers to help get you out. This is insanity, people. This is all being traced right now. Cash and all the rest of them, Pam Bondi, they're all on this. They're already aware of this. And let's just hope they can get all the way up the food chain and start jailing the politicians that are part of this. Because this is just, there's just no excuse for it anymore. It's just craziness. So now let's just get on to a quick wrap up of what's going on across Canada as of last night.
TTC took a streetcar out of service over the weekend after a syringe was found underneath a seat.
Yeah, that syringe was found on a 501 Queen streetcar on Saturday morning. The person who found it tells CP24 they told 2 TTC employees at the time, but the streetcar remained in service and the syringe was not disposed of during the duration of their trip. A TTC spokesperson says the incident was reported through the Safe TTC app, at which time the streetcar was immediately taken out of service and returned to the car house, where the syringe was safely disposed of and the car thoroughly cleaned.
Craziness. Absolute craziness. This is kind of interesting that this is still smoldering. This started in May
A smoky haze hung over part of Edmonton today. The source is a fire near the Anthony Henday and 111th Avenue that started
And in Edmonton, by the way, for those that don't know, the Anthony Henday is part of the freeway system.
last month and continues to burn. CTV's Amanda Anderson explains why putting it out is such a challenge.
In early May, fire ripped through this land in West Edmonton, forcing the closure of the Anthony Henday and sending smoke into the air seen kilometers away. A month later, and the fire still isn't out. The problem is the fire is burning in peatlands, the type of organic-rich terrain Alberta Wildfire says is one of the most challenging to put out.
Sometimes you might need heavier equipment to kind of, over a large area, dig trenches or rows of line across an area that they'll then fill with water.
Work crews have been doing for the past few weeks. Just when it appears the fire's out, it's not long before smoke starts billowing from the ground again.
It's really difficult to extinguish. It requires lots of water because peat can burn at really high moisture contents.
These fires can burn for weeks, months, or even years.
We've seen evidence of fires burning through the winter with snow cover on the ground, and there's still smoke coming out of the ground. So it just speaks to how persistent these peat fires are.
Greg Verkijk studies wildfires within boreal peatlands. His focus now is the 2021 fire in Parkland County and the eco-hydrological controls on peat burn severity.
The local fire department spent over a year trying to contain this fire. It burned through the winter and cost them millions of dollars to work on.
He says when peatlands have proper moisture, they're typically able to resist fire. It's when they're drained, either by humans or because of drought, they can become a fire hazard. Verkijk also says because they burn at a lower intensity, peat fires are also a health risk.
Tend to release more particulate matter than crown fires do, and this is partially the high density of carbon in peatlands, but also because of the type of fire that it is. So smoldering fires, they burn at much lower temperatures, so you're not getting as complete a combustion.
He hopes his research will offer practical strategies for restoration and fuel management. Officials believe this fire on land owned by the Alberta government was human-caused. Amanda Anderson, CT.
So there's a lot of names for these. They'll call them like a ghost fire, a zombie fire. And they happen a lot. It's amazing how little they get talked about. A lot of the forest fires, like even some of the ones that are going on right now, could very well have been caused from these types of ghost fires, where there was a fire somewhere within the area, and then years can go by while it's burning, and it'll burn for miles underneath the ground and go unnoticed, especially in areas where there's no inhabitants, until finally it ends up in an area where the ground itself will actually fall and open itself up. And then with the wind, it actually, goes from this charcoal burning like a coal would burn to a flame, and then ignites the fallen trees and everything else. And then you've got an all-out fire going on. They're really, really hard to locate, to chase, and they are very expensive. And like he said, for the most part, the best way they have to tackle them is they will put huge spikes down. They will cut a trench past that actual peat layer, and it'll need to be X amount of wide so the heat can't actually cross over from one side to the next. And then they try to flood this area with water. The problem being is that when peat gets into a state like this, peat becomes a sponge. So it takes, I'm talking an unfathomable amount of water to actually fill them, and then you need to hold that because the ground is constantly draining this water away. And like the guy said, peat, because of how it's made, the biomass that it is, it's got a huge amount of carbon in it. It can light under very wet conditions, and it, like I said, it's not a matter that it actually lights up on fire like dry grass. It smolders and burns for a very high heat for a long time and travels very slowly. It actually can create its own oxygen underneath the ground to sustain itself, to keep burning. There's all of the right components buried underneath there for this to happen. This is craziness, and like I said, it's something that a lot of people have got to be aware of, and it's amazing how much of Canada has peat. And if you're a new viewer, I urge you, check out my earlier videos. I just did a video kind of talking about something along this lines of how the WWF has just come out saying how we're such a huge carbon sink, and a lot of that is the permeated part below the surface of the ground, and that's where all of this carbon is stored, and it does breathe. It absorbs and it puts out. So this I mean, we have a lot of peat across Canada. There could be fires that have been burning for decades that we don't even know about, that could expose themselves during a drought season. Moving right along. Let's deal with this driver arrested for hitting the Coliseum. This has happened a couple days ago, actually. And at least they finally got the guy.
Tim Hortons is steeped in routines and double-doubles. But on this day in late
yes. I wasn't going to show this to the last, but I might as well show you right now. This happened. This got caught on tape in a Tim Hortons. There was a young kid who got Mike Tyson'd. Because some people really need to be punched in the mouth. And that's true. And especially this younger generation. There's a lot of spoiled kids out there. And I won't say that my generation didn't have it. There was, as opposed to my grandfather's generation, to my dad's generation, to my generation, to my kid's generation, to the next kid's generation, this is getting exponentially worse. It's just getting out of hand. A lot of less discipline, way too much freedoms, and just lack of respect. And the outcome to this, trust me, you're going to love this.
Tim Hortons is steeped in routines and double-doubles. But on this day in late April, the only thing brewing was trouble.
I get a chocolate bar whipped at my
Go get
head. So I turned around. There's like a 14-year-old kid standing there. So I just kind of gave him a stink eye. And then I heard an old man start yelling, so I just whipped the phone. I knew something was going to go down.
Isaac Campbell captured the altercation on video. You see a man leaning over a booth where the teen is sitting before hitting him several times.
And started feeding him with punches, which, got broken up pretty quick. People started yelling, and this is where this guy gives his little speech.
Others surround the table talking to the team who was allegedly throwing food at customers, hitting the man's wife.
You think it's funny, eh?
It ends when another man steps in, slapping the teen before walking away.
Holy smoke.
The video, posted to Campbell's Instagram over the weekend, has since gone viral, with more than 11 million views.
I'm worried about the youth of today that have to resort to that kind of dealing too. But I applaud the guy for defending himself and defending his wife.
Many commenting have shared that position.
Talk crap, get slapped type of moment, and like justice being served.
Saanich police now investigating, saying the incident was only recently reported. They admit they don't have the full story just yet and are asking for anyone with information to come forward.
We have no control over the theme and the narrative on the internet, but what we can do is react to the evidence presented before us and assess it on its merits and whether the actions can meet a criminal threshold or not. That will be determined.
You can see he's kind of like getting in his face first.
Campbell figures the senior was giving the teen exactly what he ordered. A little discipline served fresh and hot. Kylie Stanton, Global News.
Now, the saddest part about this is, and I'm going to try to find it, but a lot of this stuff gets buried and it's really hard to find. But I would not be surprised if that senior and that father both get charged for doing the job of what obviously this kid's parents haven't done. And this kid needs discipline. And the worst part is a society walks by. And because they're so afraid of the government, especially since Trudeau came in power, and like I've said before, and this was shocking to me, and this is again one of the big reasons that I started this show. Years ago, now I don't put up with this. I've actually had altercations with the police and RCMP for jumping in. I'm bad that way. Well, not bad. It's a good quality. When I see injustice being done, I'm sorry. I'm Canadian. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm gonna step in. And what really caught me is some of the things that have been happening in the last 7 years. Like, for instance, the girl on the subway who was getting, you-know-whatted. And nobody jumped in. Not even the driver stopped the bus. It got very little media attention. Unbelievable. But people are afraid because if they did jump in and say the predator pulled out a weapon and then you defended yourself against that, now you're facing multiple charges. And the way that our complete, they're mentally challenged judicial system, especially the Supreme Court, have passed laws and set precedents on how you can't use a weapon larger than what you're being attacked on to save yourself, or then you get charged. So if the guy ends up perishing, you end up going to jail for the big M word. It's crazy. And then there's the episode that happened in Edmonton with the guy who, till this day, the media still hasn't came out and said was a T. He was an extremist. He had a ISIS flag in his van. He was going to run over a pile of people in Edmonton. At an altercation, the cop went down. He was using a sharp pokey poke and was trying to take the cop's gun. There were 6 foot plus people around. I'm talking 6'2" to 6'6", big ass people. What do? They grabbed their phones and they recorded it. I was through my glasses, my hat. I was losing it watching that footage. What happened to Canada? Unbelievable. So I'll be watching this story, and I tell you, if that senior and that dad end up even getting charged, this is just, and like I said, I won't be surprised, and they'll try to hide it because I'll have a hard time finding it because media won't say a word, and I'm already buried in so much fascist corruption and overrule that it's hard for me to find these little stories to keep going on them. It just breaks my heart. As a Canadian, I am so embarrassed by it. So embarrassed. And by the way, the every time that I did have and I was involved in that, I ended up getting thanked. And once I almost got charged, but thanks to the officers standing up to their superiors, I was let go because I was in the right and they found that what I did actually did help the situation and clarify to a lot of people around on what they did, what some of those officers did wrong and what others were trying to correct. And then lo and behold, I saw what looked like an injustice and I got involved into it. And that goes right down to kicking an animal or something. You tried that around me, buddy. I'm telling you, you're gonna get it. I don't care. Charge me. I don't tolerate it. I'm Canadian. Call me old stock. It's just that stuff just kills me. That kid deserved it, and I'm glad it's going viral, and I'm glad there's so many people that are saying, hey, he deserved it. And the problem being after what happened through the Wuhan, how everybody did this, it's words, not actions. And if you look around at society, the chaos that's going on and how people just stand by or they ignore it and they pretend it's not happening, that's not how Canada used to be. That's the biggest change. And that's probably one of the big things between the West and the East, the big cities. The West, there's still a lot of people out here that don't tolerate it. They don't tolerate it. So anyways, we're going to move on here. This is the actual Pacific Coliseum crash.
It was police say just after 8 o'clock, a man driving a black BMW just rammed into this building, into the entrance over there. Fortunately, he hit a concrete beam, wasn't able to make it all the way through. Nobody was injured, of course, but today the crews have been out here. They've been putting up some new fencing, more concrete barricades around different parts of the property, trying to prevent this from happening again. Of course, nobody was hurt, but we're just about 6 weeks removed from the Lapu Lapu Festival tragedy. So people, obviously, when something like this happened, for people here, it was top of mind.
Bystanders and security pinned the driver to the ground. The 30-year-old had just rammed a BMW into the building's entrance. A collision loud enough to ring through the arena where thousands were inside for a Cirque du Soleil performance.
I was thinking, okay, this is part of the show as a bunch of the skaters came down the ramp.
Mike Roberts would quickly learn that the bang was completely unrelated.
I looked down to the right side beside my seat, and there's a small piece of the vehicle.
Police say shortly before the incident, they received a 911 call from a nearby church about the man's behavior, but they did not encounter him until the crash. No one was injured. The driver was arrested under the Mental Health Act.
He was speaking and acting erratically, specifically having religious delusions, talking about Satan, talking about God, saying other things that made it very apparent that he was experiencing a mental health crisis.
Police don't believe this was some sort of copycat act to the Lapu Lapu festival killings, nor an act of terrorism. But just 6 weeks removed from that tragic day, it's a triggering moment.
Your mind is going to go there now all the time now when you start to hear or see these things.
The man cannot be identified as he has not been charged with a crime. VPD says he has no criminal record and hasn't had any prior mental health-based interactions with police.
Just such a frightening thing to see or to witness or to experience. I am very grateful for the quick response of emergency responders in the Vancouver Police Department.
Craziness, people. Absolute craziness. So this is insane.
The bullets fired by these two masked gunmen were not intended for London nurse Linda Marquez. Instead, she died from a botched hit on her fiancé Ali Bhatti in September of 2021. Those details were heard in a London courtroom Monday during the sentencing of 18-year-old Amar Patel. He was the driver of this stolen black Volkswagen Jetta, which brought the two gunmen to the Water Oak Drive home. Justice Alyssa Mitchell told the court, Mr. Bhatti was the usual driver of that white Dodge Charger and appears to be the intended target of Mr. Patel and the two unidentified gunmen. Ms. Marquez paid the ultimate price for her relationship with Mr. Bhatti. Ms. Marquez was an innocent, defenseless victim when attacked. She was a complete stranger to Mr. Patel. Mitchell later sentenced Patel to life in prison for manslaughter. Just before being sentenced, Patel was given the opportunity to address Justice Mitchell. He stood and said, "I'm sorry to the Marquez family. I'm sorry to my family. And I'm sorry to this court." A video of the shooting was played in court. It was recorded from this camera mounted on the front of the home above the garage. Patel put his head down in the prisoner's box. He did not watch the video. Justice Mitchell said the video surveillance shows Mr. Patel waiting while two gunmen executed the driver of the white Dodge Charger. He abandoned the Jetta on a dead-end street where it was discovered 3 days after the killing. There is no evidence before me that Mr. Patel has assisted police in apprehending the two gunmen, and to my understanding, both gunmen remain at large to this day. Justice Mitchell called the attack calculated, brazen, and displayed an extraordinary degree of violence. She concluded with, "This crime has shocked the conscience of the community and rocked it to its core. This crime was perpetrated in a quiet residential neighborhood and shattered the community's sense of safety and security. The impact of this crime on London's residents will be felt for years to come."
So sad. Just so sad. And then this happened, and this is again caught. It was caught. I'll just play the video. This is just heartbreaking what's happening in Canada.
Making its way from phone to phone of students at St. Mary's High School. A St. Mary's student repeatedly kicked and punched by a swarm of people as dozens of bystanders watch and record. The fight took place next to the Kitchener School at a nearby plaza. Waterloo Regional Police confirm it happened Friday afternoon around 3:30. They're investigating a disturbance involving a large group. I spoke off camera with a teen who identified himself as the victim in the video. He told me the fight stemmed from another fight that took place in this same plaza between himself and a group of students from another school in the area. A spokesperson from the Waterloo Catholic District School Board say they are aware of the fight. They add, quote, "Our review has found that most of those involved are not affiliated with St. Mary's. The involvement of any identified students has been addressed at the school level," unquote. A man who students say was a customer nearby came to the teen's aid. After speaking with students and even some parents that were in the plaza Monday afternoon, they tell CTV News fights are very common in the area during lunch hours. One parent says she's desperate for a resolution. She says despite attempts to warn St. Mary's principal about students fighting, she was told nothing can be done since the fights aren't happening on school property. This is the video making its way from phone to phone.
It's quite sad, and you can tell in the video it's a color war. Because of the inequalities that our government has persistently allowed and in fact enhanced, they have made it even worse, creating separatism between not only the classes but between races and sexes. This has just hyper escalated the entire racism and hate that is, that Canada was once known to have like hardly any of. It was unseen. Not to say that we didn't have it, it was there, but people were afraid to even say stuff in public because they knew they'd be ostracized. They knew that people like me and others would voice our opinions and put them in their place. And now, if you're a certain sex and you get hired because of it, or a certain color, the fact that you can't get jobs based on your race, we're seeing reverse racism, and it's getting out of control. We need equality. I just don't understand how anybody can think that you're better than anybody else because of your color, your creed, or your race, or your religion, or your sex. It's unfathomable to me. I just don't get it. But yet when you you watch TV and you watch the propaganda, make it seem like, well, and the way they say it, well, 55% of the population thinks this way and only 10% think like you, so you're bad. And they're lying with numbers, they're lying with their mouth, they're purposely spreading this type of fear, hate, and division. This is the outcome of propaganda, fascist governments. Fear, hate, and division. There's no reason for it. And I've been reading a lot of different posts and stuff that are on here. I can't show any of them because of how vulgar they are, first of all, because so many people are PO'd over this. But everybody's pointing out the fact that, especially where this happened and a lot of these other cities, there are mass race wars going on. And we're seeing this happen in countries. I'm talking hundreds upon thousands of people marching the streets. And what does our media say? Because it's white people, oh, it's, it's Nazi groups, or it's, white supremacists, but they're not looking carefully at the pictures and looking and saying, oh, wow, actually, there's some dark-skinned people there too. And oh, guess what? There's some black people there too. And there's instead they pick on, they try to stop any reality of the insanity that they're pushing from actually shining through. And this is where we are. And this is just sad. And these are kids. These are kids. So if when these kids grow up, if this isn't quashed, if the government doesn't get back to reality and force equality, enough with the DEI, enough with all of this favoritism and inequality. If the government doesn't get serious on it and enforce it within its systems of justice and the policing systems, where are we going to be when these kids turn 30 and turn 40 and then they have kids? You might as well be down south, with the whole KK and the rest of them, because that's where we're going. We're going backwards. It's just insanity, absolute insanity. I have a really hard time understanding. Well, the government doesn't make any sense to me. As far as I'm concerned, it's especially the Liberal Party. They're full fascists. It's just, they're insane. They're just absolutely insane. Well, you guys, I'm going to call that an episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Check out my merchandise if you don't mind. I was checking out some prices, and boy, with that Canadian dollar, some of the stuff is a little expensive, but the quality is really good. I spent a lot of time on the graphics, making sure they were really good quality. I make a small percentage off it. It does help the channel. I don't make anything, so this is kind of my first attempt at actually trying to create an income for the channel to kind of help me get going, so I can carry on with this channel. It takes me hours and hours and hours, and with the cost of living right now, let me tell you, this my pocketbook is emptying very fast, so I could use all the help you can give me. And if you can't afford that or a donation, just like, share, and subscribe, and help get the word out and help my channel grow. And hopefully I can actually make this a full-time job and get the news out, because it's so imperative. It's so important. If we're going to keep Canada, as Canada, if we're going to try and save our country, we got to put truth to power, and we need honesty and facts. Sorry, just the facts. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you are, punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until the next time, you've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, Alias Tagay. Stay informed.